The room had always been there, but most people never really noticed it. It was the kind of place people passed through, not a place they stayed in their minds. The walls were clean but plain, the lights soft but slightly tired, and the air carried a mix of quiet sounds, footsteps, low voices, and the distant hum of the building. Nothing about it felt special. It was just another public space where life moved on without slowing down. People came and went for different reasons. Some were waiting for appointments, some were killing time, and others were simply trying to escape the noise outside. A few sat with their phones, scrolling endlessly. Others stared at the floor or the clock, counting minutes. Everyone was busy in their own small world, wrapped in thoughts they did not share. In one corner of the room sat an old piano. It had been there for years, pushed slightly to the side, as if it did not belong anymore. Its surface showed signs of age. A few keys were slightly worn, and the wood had lost its shine. Most people saw it as furniture, nothing more. Some did not even notice it at all. Every now and then, a child would walk up to it, press a few random keys, and run away laughing. Sometimes someone would sit down, play a loud tune for a moment, and stop when they felt shy or bored. No one ever stayed long enough to leave an impression. Over time, the piano became invisible, like part of the wall. That day felt no different from any other. The room was half full. A few people stood near the windows. Others sat scattered across chairs, leaving empty spaces between them. The mood was quiet but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence filled with waiting, not calm. Then she entered. She did not arrive with confidence or drama. There was no rush in her steps. She walked slowly, carrying herself in a simple way. Her clothes were modest and neat, the kind that blended into the crowd. Nothing about her appearance demanded attention. If anything, she looked like someone who preferred not to be noticed. She paused near the entrance, as if unsure where to sit. Her eyes moved around the room, not searching for people, but for space. When her gaze landed on the piano, she stopped for a moment. It was not a long pause, but it was meaningful. Something in her expression changed, very slightly. She walked toward it. A few people noticed her, but only briefly. Most assumed she would sit, tap the keys, and leave like everyone else before her. No one expected anything. No one felt curious enough to watch closely. The room stayed the same. She pulled the bench back gently and sat down. Her movements were careful, almost respectful, as if she did not want to disturb the space. She placed her hands on her lap and took a quiet breath. Her shoulders relaxed, but her face showed focus. For a few seconds, she did nothing. The silence stretched just a little longer than usual. A man near the window glanced over, then looked away. Someone cleared their throat. A phone buzzed softly. Life continued around her. Unaware, she lifted her hands and placed them on the keys still. Nothing happened. It was not hesitation. It felt more like preparation. Like someone gathering thoughts before speaking something important. Her fingers hovered, light and steady, not shaking. Then she pressed the first key. The sound was soft, simple, almost too quiet to notice. It was not a strong note meant to impress. It was gentle, careful, and warm. A second note followed, then another. The melody moved slowly, one step at a time. At first, the music blended into the background. A few people kept talking in low voices. Someone shifted in their seat. The room did not stop, but something about the sound felt different. It was not loud enough to demand attention, yet it did not disappear either. It rested in the air, calm and steady. It carried a feeling that was hard to explain, like a familiar memory that could not be named. One by one, small changes began to happen. A woman who had been scrolling on her phone stopped moving her thumb. She did not look up right away, but her body became still. A man standing near the wall crossed his arms and leaned back, listening without realizing it. A child stopped fidgeting and looked toward the piano. The melody continued, simple and slow. No fast movements, no dramatic shifts, just clean notes flowing into each other, like a quiet conversation. The room began to soften. The music did not try to be perfect. There were no sharp sounds or fancy patterns. It felt honest, like it was being played for the sake of playing, not for applause. That honesty made people listen. The conversations faded, not suddenly, but naturally. Voices lowered. Chairs stopped moving. Even the building sound seemed to pull back. She kept her eyes on the keys, her face calm. There was no smile, no sadness, just focus. Her hands moved with confidence, but not pride. Every note felt intentional, like she knew exactly where the melody was going, even if no one else did. The piano, which had been ignored for so long, suddenly felt alive again. Its sound filled the room without pushing against it. It did not overpower anyone. Instead, it invited them in. People started to listen fully now, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. For the first time that day, no one was checking the time. No one was thinking about where they needed to go next. The room was no longer just a place to wait. It became a place to feel. And as the melody continued, something quietly began to change inside everyone who heard it, even though they did not yet understand why. The melody continued, moving gently through the room like a soft breeze. It did not rush. It did not demand attention. It simply existed, steady and calm, filling the space between people without crossing any boundaries. Each note seemed to rest for a moment before giving way to the next, as if the music itself was breathing. The woman at the piano remained quiet and focused. Her posture was relaxed, yet there was intention in every movement. She did not look around to see who was listening. She did not lift her head to read the room. It was as if, for these moments, the rest of the world had faded away. There was only the piano, the keys beneath her fingers, and the sound rising into the air. People who had been strangers to one another now shared something invisible. No one spoke, but everyone felt it. A man who had arrived frustrated from a long morning slowly unclenched his jaw. A woman who had been worrying about an unread message felt her thoughts slow down. Someone sitting alone felt less alone. Without knowing why, the melody repeated. Not exactly the same, but close enough to feel familiar. It created a sense of safety, like walking a path already known. With each repetition, the room grew quieter, not because of rules or signs, but because no one wanted to break the feeling. The piano itself seemed surprised by its own voice. Keys that had been pressed carelessly in the past now responded with warmth. Even the older notes, slightly uneven, added character instead of flaw. The sound was not polished, but it was real, and that made it powerful. As the music flowed, small details became more noticeable. The way light touched the floor, the way someone's foot stopped tapping, the way breathing in the room slowly matched the rhythm of the melody. Time felt different, stretched and gentle. The woman's hands moved with quiet confidence. There was no rush to reach the end of the piece. She allowed the pauses to speak just as clearly as the notes. Those pauses carried weight. They gave listeners space to feel their own thoughts rising and settling. Somewhere in the middle of the melody, a subtle change appeared. A slightly deeper note, a softer touch. It was small, but it shifted the emotion in the room. What had started as calm now carried a hint of longing, not sadness exactly, but reflection. A listener near the back swallowed hard, surprised by the sudden tightness in their chest. Another felt an old memory surface, one they had not thought about in years. It was not painful, but it was honest. The music did not force memories forward. It simply opened the door. The woman at the piano showed no sign of these reactions. Her face remained steady, but her eyes held depth. This was not the first time she had played like this. The melody was familiar to her in a deeply personal way. It was something she returned to when words failed long before this moment. Music had been her quiet companion. During times when speaking felt heavy, she listened instead. During moments of loss or confusion, she played, not to perform, but to understand herself. This simple melody had followed her through different seasons of life, changing slightly each time, but never losing its core. In the room, people leaned forward without realizing it. Bodies shifted closer to the sound. A shared focus pulled everyone toward the piano, even those who tried to remain distracted. The room felt smaller now, not crowded, but connected. The melody grew just a little stronger, still gentle, but more confident. It was as if the music had found its voice and decided to speak clearly. The notes rose and fell with purpose, telling a story without words outside the room. The world continued as usual. Traffic moved, phones rang, schedules pressed on, but inside, those things felt far away. The music created a pocket of stillness, a break from everything rushing by. Someone near the front closed their eyes. Another rested their hands in their lap, finally still. A child watched closely, drawn by the calm expression on the woman's face and the way her fingers danced lightly across the keys. The woman's breathing stayed even. She did not rush through the melody. She trusted it. She allowed it to unfold naturally, like a story being told slowly, making sure every listener could follow. There was no fear in her playing now. If there had been any nervousness when she first sat down, it was gone. The piano was no longer a public object. It was familiar ground, a place where she felt safe. The melody softened again, returning to its simple beginning. It felt like coming home after a long journey. The room responded without effort. People remained quiet, holding on to the moment. No one knew how long she had been playing. Time had lost its sharp edges. Minutes no longer mattered. What mattered was the feeling hanging gently in the air. And as the music continued, it became clear that this was no longer just a person playing a piano in a public space. Something deeper was unfolding, something that would leave a mark on everyone present, even if they could not yet explain it. The melody did not end. Instead, it slowly opened into something deeper, like a door pushed wider with care. The sound still felt simple, but now it carried more weight. Each note seemed to stay in the air a little longer, giving people time to feel it before it faded. The room was fully changed now. It no longer felt like a place people passed through. It felt held together by the music, as if the walls themselves were listening. No one spoke. Even small movements felt too loud. Everyone understood, without being told, that this moment was fragile. The woman at the piano adjusted her hands slightly. Her fingers moved with ease, guided by memory more than thought. This part of the melody came from somewhere deeper inside her. It was not something she practiced for others. It was something she played when she needed to remind herself who she was long ago. Before this room and these strangers, music had entered her life quietly. It did not arrive during a happy time. It came during a season when words felt useless, when questions had no answers, when the future felt uncertain and heavy. Back then, she had learned to sit alone with a piano much like this one. Not new, not perfect, just present. She would press the keys slowly, not trying to sound good, just trying to feel something real. Over time, the piano became a place where she could breathe again. Those memories flowed into her hands now. The melody shifted slightly, growing more emotional, but never dramatic. It carried honesty instead of force. Anyone listening could feel that this music was not meant to impress. It was meant to be shared. In the room, people began to feel seen in ways they did not expect. Someone who had felt invisible for months suddenly felt understood. Another, who had been carrying quiet grief, felt permission to let it rest for a moment. The music did not fix anything, but it softened the edges. A person near the aisle brushed away a tear without drawing attention. Another smiled softly, surprised by the warmth spreading through their chest. These reactions happened naturally, without embarrassment. No one judged. The music created safety. The woman's shoulders remained relaxed. Her face showed calm, but also depth. This part of the melody asked for patience. It asked listeners to stay present, not to rush ahead. She paused briefly, letting the silence speak. That pause felt important, like a breath taken before something honest is said. The room leaned into that silence, holding it gently. Then the music returned, quieter now, more personal. The notes felt closer, as if the piano was speaking directly to each person, one by one. It was impossible to tell how such a simple melody could hold so much meaning, but it did. The woman remembered moments when she had doubted herself, times when she felt small and unsure, times when playing music was the only way she could remind herself that her voice mattered, even if no one was listening. Now, people were listening, not because she asked them to, but because they needed to. The melody grew warmer, like sunlight slowly reaching into a shaded room. The earlier heaviness lifted just enough to bring comfort. It felt like reassurance, quiet but steady. The piano responded faithfully, each key offering its sound without resistance. Even the imperfections blended into the whole, reminding everyone that beauty did not require perfection. In the back of the room, someone straightened their posture, as if letting go of tension they had been carrying all day. Another took a deep breath, realizing it was the first full breath they had taken in a while. The woman did not rush the ending. She allowed the melody to take its time, honoring every note. This was not about finishing. It was about being present until the music was ready to move on. As she played, she felt something she had not expected. Connection, not loud or overwhelming, but gentle and real. These strangers were feeling what she had felt for years, and that mattered. The room felt warmer now, not in temperature, but in spirit. The distance between people seemed smaller. They were still strangers, but they were sharing something honest. The melody began to settle, easing toward a close, though no one wanted it to end. The final notes approached slowly, like footsteps nearing a door that no one wanted to open yet. And as the music continued toward that quiet edge, everyone in the room understood one thing clearly. This moment would not simply pass. It would stay with them, long after the last note faded. The melody slowed, not because it was ending, but because it was changing. It felt like the moment in a conversation when someone decides to speak from the heart. The notes became more careful, more thoughtful, as if they were choosing their words. The woman felt it too. She adjusted her touch, pressing the keys with a softer hand. This part of the music carried memories she did not often share. Even with herself, she stayed calm on the outside. But inside, old moments were moving quietly. There had been a time when she stopped playing altogether. Life had grown loud, demanding, and heavy. Responsibilities piled up. Expectations pressed in from every direction. Music slowly slipped into the background, replaced by survival and routine. During those years, the piano became something distant. She would pass one and feel a small ache, like seeing an old friend and not knowing how to speak anymore. She told herself she would return to it someday, when things were easier, when time allowed. But time rarely allows. What brought her back was not joy, but exhaustion. One evening, after a long day that felt like too much, she sat at a piano again. Her hands felt stiff. Her confidence was gone. She pressed a single key, then another. The sound was imperfect, but it was real. That night, she remembered why music mattered. It did not fix her problems. It did not erase the weight she carried, but it gave her a place to set that weight down, even if only for a few minutes. That same feeling guided her hands now. In the room, the listeners felt the shift. The music had moved from shared calm into something more personal. It felt like an invitation, not to watch, but to reflect. Someone near the front thought about a choice they had been avoiding. Another remembered a dream they had quietly put aside. The melody did not judge. It simply reminded. The woman's fingers moved slowly, confidently, like someone walking through familiar memories. There was no fear in revisiting them now. Time had softened their edges. She allowed the music to grow slightly stronger, not louder, but more certain. The notes stood taller, as if the melody had found its balance. This was not sadness. It was acceptance. People in the room responded in small ways. A straightened back, a deeper breath, a relaxed jaw. The kind of changes that happen when something inside finally loosens. The piano filled the space without overwhelming it. It felt as if the room itself had leaned closer, holding the sound gently. She remembered moments of doubt, when she questioned her worth, her direction, her place in the world. During those times, music had been her quiet reminder that she still existed beyond expectations. Now, strangers were feeling that same reminder. The melody repeated again, slightly changed, like a thought seen from a new angle. It carried resilience, built slowly over time. It spoke of standing up again after sitting with uncertainty. A listener near the window smiled softly, recognizing that feeling, without fully understanding it. Another nodded almost imperceptibly, as if agreeing with something finally said aloud. The woman stayed focused, grounded. She was not performing for approval. She was sharing something honest, and that was enough. The room felt different from before. Not just quieter, but kinder. The distance between people felt smaller. There was an unspoken understanding that everyone carried something unseen. The melody softened once more, creating space for that understanding to settle. It felt like a pause meant for reflection, not silence. She let her hands rest briefly on the keys, feeling their warmth. Then she continued, gently guiding the music forward outside. The world kept moving, unaware of the small transformation happening inside this room. But for those present, this moment felt important. The notes flowed with quiet strength now, steady and reassuring. They did not rush toward an ending. They stayed where they were needed. The woman felt connected, not just to the piano, but to the people listening. This connection did not scare her. It felt natural, like something that had always been there, waiting. As the melody carried on, one thing became clear to everyone in the room. This music was no longer just sound. It was a reminder of resilience, of returning to oneself, of finding meaning in simple moments. And with each note, the room continued to change, preparing for something even deeper still to come. The melody reached a place where it felt full, like a deep breath finally released. The notes were steady and confident now, carrying everything that had come before them. The room sensed it. Something important was happening, even if no one could explain exactly what it was. The woman's hands moved with quiet certainty. There was no hesitation left. Every key she pressed felt intentional, like a decision already made long ago. This part of the music held strength, not the loud kind, but the kind built slowly through endurance. People in the room felt it settle inside them. A calm focus replaced wandering thoughts. Worries that had felt heavy earlier now seemed lighter, not gone, but easier to carry. The music did not promise answers. It offered steadiness. A person who had been standing for a long time finally sat down, realizing their legs were tired. Another rested their hands on their knees, breathing in time with the melody. These small movements showed how deeply the music had reached. The woman remembered moments when she had almost given up on herself, times when she felt invisible, unheard, and unsure of her value. During those periods, playing music felt pointless. But she learned something important back then. Even when no one listens, expression still matters. That truth lived in this melody. She played with a touch that balanced control and freedom. The notes flowed naturally, not forced. They carried confidence earned through patience and quiet persistence. In the room, a listener near the aisle felt a sudden clarity. They thought about a conversation they had been avoiding and realized they were ready to have it. Another thought about calling someone they had pushed away, feeling the courage rise gently instead of suddenly. The music created space for these realizations. It did not push them forward. It simply held them safely until they were ready. The piano responded beautifully. Its sound richer now, as if grateful to be played with care. Every vibration seemed to fill the room evenly, reaching even those who tried not to listen. The woman's face remained calm, but her eyes reflected depth and presence. She was fully there, connected to every sound, every pause. This was not performance. This was communication. The melody rose slightly, not in volume, but in feeling. It carried hope, quiet but steady. It spoke of moving forward without forgetting the past. A person near the back let out a small breath they did not know they were holding. Another smiled without thinking, feeling lighter than they had all day. The room felt united in a gentle way. No one knew each other's names or stories, yet everyone shared this moment fully. It felt rare and meaningful. The woman allowed the melody to repeat one last time, slower now, more deliberate. It felt like a final reflection. Looking back before stepping ahead, her hands softened, her touch lighter. The music grew quieter, drawing people closer rather than pushing them away. Silence waited patiently at the edges. Listeners leaned into the sound, aware that the ending was near. No one wanted to interrupt it. No one moved. The woman felt gratitude, not for attention, but for connection. These strangers had listened with open hearts. That was enough. The final notes approached gently, like footsteps slowing before stopping. Each one settled into the room, leaving warmth behind. When the last key was pressed, the sound faded naturally. The silence that followed was deep and respectful. It was not empty. It was full of feeling. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The room held the silence carefully, honoring what had just been shared. And in that stillness, everyone understood something quietly. This simple melody had reached places words could not. It had changed the room, and it had changed them. The music was over, but its impact remained, preparing the room for what would come next. The silence after the final note felt almost as important as the music itself. It lingered in the room, unbroken and gentle. Like a shared breath everyone was afraid to release too soon. No one clapped. No one spoke. The quiet felt meaningful, as if sound would only weaken what had just been felt. The woman remained seated for a moment, her hands resting lightly on the keys. She did not rush to stand. She allowed the silence to exist, respecting it the same way she had respected every note. Her shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. The music had ended, but the feeling was still very much alive. Around her, people stayed still. Some looked at the floor. Others looked toward the piano. A few stared into nothing, lost in their own thoughts. Faces showed calm, reflection, and something close to gratitude. It was rare for so many people to feel the same moment together without needing words. Eventually, one person began to clap. It was not loud, just a few soft claps, slow and steady. Another joined, then another. Soon, the room filled with applause, not the kind meant to cheer, but the kind meant to say thank you. The woman stood up quietly. She did not bow or smile widely. She gave a small nod, her expression humble and sincere. Attention made her slightly uncomfortable, but she accepted it with grace. The applause was not what mattered most. What mattered had already happened. As the clapping faded, people slowly returned to movement. Someone picked up their bag. Another checked the time. Life began to flow again, but it felt different now, softer around the edges. The woman stepped away from the piano. She walked toward the exit at the same calm pace she had arrived. A few people watched her go, wanting to say something, but unsure what words would be enough. In the end, most said nothing. Their silence was full of respect. Near the door, someone caught her eye and offered a small, thankful smile. She returned it, understanding more than words could express. That brief exchange held warmth and acknowledgement, shared between strangers who had felt something real together. She left the room and disappeared into the flow of people outside. No one followed. No one asked her name. She became just another person moving through the day. Inside the room, the piano stood quietly again, but it no longer felt invisible. People glanced at it as they passed, seeing it not as furniture, but as something alive with possibility. The listeners carried the moment with them in different ways. One person walked out feeling lighter, deciding to be kinder to themselves. Another felt inspired to return to something they once loved, but had set aside. Someone else simply felt calmer, more present. The effect was subtle, but lasting. The woman continued her day like anyone else. She took public transport, waited in lines, and moved through familiar routines. To the world, nothing had changed. But inside her, something felt settled. She did not think of the performance as special. To her, it was a conversation she had needed to have, and the room had happened to listen. She felt grateful for that, but she did not need it to happen again. That evening, as the day slowed, she thought briefly of the piano and the people in the room. She wondered how they were feeling now. She hoped the music had stayed with them in quiet ways. She did not replay the melody in her head. She did not judge how it sounded. She simply felt peace, knowing she had been honest. Days passed. The room returned to its usual rhythm. New people came and went. Conversations filled the space again. The clock kept ticking, but every now and then, someone would sit a little quieter than before. Someone would glance at the piano and smile faintly. The piano itself waited patiently. One afternoon, a child approached it and pressed a single key. The sound echoed softly. The child paused, listening, then pressed another key, slower this time. The notes were simple, unsure, but curious. An adult nearby watched, remembering something they had felt not long ago. They did not stop the child. They let the sound exist, and so the effect continued, quietly spreading in ways no one could measure. The woman never returned to that room, but she did not need to. The moment had already taken root. It lived on in memory, in feeling, and in small changes that mattered. Sometimes, transformation does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself or demand attention. Sometimes, it comes as a simple melody, played with honesty in a room full of strangers. And sometimes, that is enough to change everything.